But thank God I must have read another 50 pages of my Morim, so I thank you guys for that. But this is definitely a classic. At the end of the whole thing, I said, I really don't know what to do. My wife said, why don't you take just one? So I just said, okay. But this truly is a very classic mimer. We're reading from the Sefer Torah Or, which is the Alter Rebbe's classic work, going through the Parshas, and Megillat Esther. So we'll start here. Vayoshet HaMelech LeEsther es Sharvit HaZahav. Right, from the Megillah, it says that the king stretched out to Esther the golden scepter. V'takam Esther v'tamod lifnei HaMelech. And Esther stood up, or she arose and stood before the king. Okay. Lahavin inyan hashinoim. So anyway, this is basically the what's going on in the story at this point. That he basically agrees to her coming in and seeing him, right? He basically stretches out the scepter, which is a sign that she's allowed to come to see the king, and her wish has been granted. Lahavin inyan hashinoim shebein parsha zu leparsha shel hamayla. But there's another incident with the golden scepter, and we have to understand that the slight differences between this one and the one that's above it. The Sham Netmar, there it says Vayoshet HaMelech et Sharvit HaZahav asher biyado. There it says that the king gave over the golden scepter that was in his hand. He stretched out the golden scepter that was in his hand. Right? So it says Vayoshet HaMelech LeEsther es Sharvit HaZahav, and over there it says Vayoshet HaMelech es Sharvit HaZahav asher biyado. So the other one says it's in his hand. This one says he just stretched it out. It doesn't say it's in his hand. Also, it says over there that she touched the tip of the scepter. V'kan mashma, whereas here it implies shenasan la kol hasharvit. Whereas here it implies that he gave her basically the whole scepter. Whereas in the other case, she only was able to touch the tip of the scepter. Here he gave her the whole scepter.
The first one she touches the tip?
Yeah. V'gam lahavin inyan zeh b'chol zman u'mahu. So besides the fact that there's a discrepancy in the verse, we have to of course understand what does this have to do with us and in all times. What's the mystical significance here? So it says, Hine Knesset Yisrael nikres b'shem Esther. In general, the whole Jewish people is called by the name Esther. Al Shem va'anochi haster astir panai bayomahu. It comes from the verse where basically Hashem is talking about the sort of negative days that are approaching after we get ousted from the land. And he said, on that day, I will surely conceal my face. And the word for conceal is haster astir, which of course sounds like Esther.
What does that mean?
Haster astir is two words of concealment. But in the Gemara, there's an interesting part of the Gemara where it asks where all the characters from the Purim story come from in the Torah. So it says, where does Mordechai come from in the Torah? Where does Haman come from in the Torah? Like where there are verses in the Torah, even though they lived long after the Torah was written, the Gemara takes it as an obvious fact that their names are found in the Torah. So for Esther, this is the verse that's brought. It says, on that day, Anuchi haster astir panai. She's written in the Torah in these words, which is the words for Hashem is hiding. So the Jewish people are called by the name Esther on that verse. Ki penei Hashem shu gilo shechinaso. Because basically the face of Hashem, where it says my face will be concealed on that day, the face of Hashem, which really represents the revelation of His Shekhinah. Where do you see that? Kemo shekasuv yair Hashem panav elecha. Because it says Hashem will shine His face upon you, so we see that that's talking about the face is His Shekhinah. Hu achshav bizman hagalis mesuteres b'chinas bayom hahu. Nowadays, in the times of Gullus, it's hidden in the realm called Yom Hahu. Right? In other words, by Yom Hahu, Haster Astir Panai. Panai is the Shekhinah. Haster is concealed. And when is it concealed? By Yom Hahu, which refers to the times of Gullus. And why is that? Ki Yom Hahu more al Yom She'enu Nira v'Nigla. Ma she'en kin Yom Hazeh. He says because the words Yom Hahu represents a level where light is not revealed. Unlike the words, for example, Yom Hazeh. So basically there's a whole concept that's brought out. He puts it in parentheses here. But he himself explains it in later Maimarim here. And there's a very famous Maimar from the Rabbi which goes deeply into this. But basically, it says there's 4 different levels. Bayom Hazeh, Bayom Hahu, Balayla Hazeh, and Balayla Hahu. Right? And there are basically 4 different levels of light and darkness, essentially. But whenever you have the word Zeh, it refers to revelation, because just like it isn't actually the meaning of the word. When you say this, it always means something which is before you. You can't say the word this on something which is not present. Whereas that is something which is not before you, something in a state of concealment. So by Yom Hahu represents the idea that the Yom, the day, is not in a state of this, it's in a state of that, which means it's not revealed. So Yom Hahu refers to Gullus, basically, in this capacity. These terms are a little bit manipulatable, but in this capacity, that's what he means that it says. So now we have the whole pasuk. Bayom Hahu, which represents a concealment of the light. Astir, which is concealment. Panai, the Shekhinah. Right? So that day, which represents the day when light is not shining, in other words, in the times of Gullus, Panai, my face, the Shekhinah, is concealed. And that word is Esther. So that really refers to every single Jew, that in the times of Gullus, we're in a state of Esther, we're called Esther. Basically because the Shekhinah is in a state of Gullus.
But the translation is that on that day my face is concealed.
Yeah. And from here we learn that the Jewish people are called Esther in the time of Gullus. V'derech prat b'chol nefesh miYisrael, and in a particular way, when it comes to every single Jew, hine kasher b'chines nitzotz nafsho elokis, when the spark of his godly soul, hu mechusa u'maluvash, it's covered over and enclosed, b'levushim achshava dibur ma'isa agashmi, into thought, speech, and action which are corporal, physical. In other words, not for Hashem. Ve'ein or Hashem shora u'misgalebo, and that means that the light of God is not able to dwell and reveal itself in him. Liot nitfas v'nikba v'mocho v'libo, in order to be grasped and fixed into his mind and heart. Ha'aval Hashem, the love of Hashem, l'davkabo, in order to cling to him, b'his galus halev, in a revealed way. Ki'im b'chinis makif, and therefore it remains in a state of makif. What is makif? It means it doesn't enter into his heart and his mind and his thought, speech, and action. Right? You know, it doesn't mean he doesn't have the godly light. It's just that he's not letting it out. We have to do things to let it out, and that means we have to meditate to put it into our mind. We have to feel the love that's a result of that meditation to put it into our hearts, and that love has to then express itself into concrete thought, speech, and action, which we have to produce. It doesn't happen by itself. It's an act of love, and if that's not being done, then all the love stays makif. It stays basically unchanneled.
You said if someone has speech, thought, and action, and it's not for the sake of Hashem,
right?
then you said then he doesn't have speech, thought, and action.
Well, it doesn't have godly thought, speech, and action. You're never without any, for example, godly. You're never without thought. Just take thought. You can't not think even for a second. It's just that you're either thinking Torah or you're thinking something else. So that's what he means when he says he doesn't have thought, speech, and action.
You're talking about Achashverosh.
No, he's talking about every yid. Here, go back to the period. It says, "B'derech prat we said this concept about, in general, God is hiding in Gullus, right? And then we said in particular every Jew, his godly spark can be covered over in the garments of thought, speech, and action that are physical. That's when he's having physical. When I say physical, I mean not holy, right? Or he means not holy. When he's having non-holy thought, speech, and action, then he's also called Esther, right? Every Yid is called Esther because his godliness is in a state of concealment as opposed to a state of revelation. Because Hashem is not able to dwell inside of him, right? To be fixed in his heart and mind with a love and a clinging to Hashem and a revealed heart, but rather it remains makif. His love remains makif, right? Remains sort of like subconscious, milamayla, from above. So he says, Nikr b'chinas avazu b'shem Esther. So that love that he still has for Hashem, even though it's not expressed in any of his capacities, it's called Esther. Because that's what it means. It's like a hidden love. Just like the Shekhinah, it doesn't like go away in Gullus, it's just concealed. He's hiding his Shekhinah. It's still underlying everything. It just doesn't pop out and show itself. Unlike the days of the Beit Hamikdash, when there was a vessel for the Beit Hamikdash is sort of like Hashem's mind and heart. It allows godliness to express itself and come into the being and like show its face.
It's like a dormant love.
It's a dormant love. Levi, do you want to make a copy? Someone's going to have to cough up a book then. Mine?
You wait for me.
Well, I mean, it's already late. This whole mimer, it goes on to the next page one column also. The keys.
Like so out of it.
Make like 5.
Okay.
Okay, so everyone has this concept. This is what we're also. Not only is Hashem is called Esther, the Shekhinah is called Esther in the time of Gullus, but every Jew, when we're in a state of Gullus in our own selves, we're called, the love that we have is called Esther. Esther, from the word Ava Masuteris also. You ever heard of this concept in Tanya? It's very well tread concept. Ava Masuteris means the hidden love. It basically means like the love that every Jew has, which is not necessarily showing. It's what makes you a Jew. Basically, whether you're acting like a Jew or not, you have an Ava Masuteris. You have like a burning love for Hashem inside. It's just, if you don't make vessels for it to come out, it just stays sort of underground. It's the godly soul. Shehi Masuteris, going on the top line, end of the top line, next page. He Masuteris, v'bechinas bayom hahu, she'enu b'his galus. And where is it hiding? In the level of bayom hahu, which we just said a minute ago. Yom is day, but hahu is a hidden level of day, which means it's not in a state of revelation. You follow, Eli?
No, not quite. We're talking about the Shekhinah now? Or we're talking about
the hidden love in every Jew.
Okay.
You know, refresh yourself just a little bit. Have some beans or something.
Some bina.
There you go. Have a little bina. Little South American beans. Bina. Okay. So, Vehi b'chinas nakuda behechala. What is this called in Kabbalah language? The point in the palace. Right? Because I went through so many Maimarim, there's a lot of little perushim that I actually found on this Maimar here and there. Yes, and the idea is the heichal, right? The word heichal, which means like a chamber, is the gematria of 52, I believe, which is the gematria of the word Adni, the name of God, Ado.
Is it hey,
Yeah. Heichal, Hey, Yud, Chaf, Lamed. So the Heichal is actually the name, like for Adni, right? It's Hashem's name. So the Nakuda, so the name Adni in general is like a concealing name, right? Because it's the name of Hashem in the sphere of Malchus, and Malchus in general is when Hashem sort of hides all of Himself and He just puts forward His name. So the Nakuda Behechala, the point in that chamber, is basically like Havaya, which is the revealed level of God inside of us. So it's the hidden love, right? It's the point which is sort of wrapped around it, this level of Adni. Just like today, you read Baruch Atah Hashem, but you don't say Hashem's name. You say something else when you get to Hashem's name. Because Hashem's name is hiding. And instead of the point, you say this chamber that it's like basically hiding in. All you see is the chamber. You don't see the actual real thing.
So the point is Yud-Kei
Right. Which is basically another word of saying the Shekhinah, right? It's the hidden love is the point in this palace.
Are you referring to the palace as the chamber?
Yes. Heichal is the gematria Adni.
How much is it?
I think it's 52. Let's think about that for a second, though. Do the math. Aleph Dalet is going to be
15 plus
5. Got that one. Plus 50. 55. We're already off. 65. That's what it is. Sorry, 65. Okay. So this point in the palace is called Panemius Nekudas Libo. It's the innermost point of your heart, right? Vadai Misuteres he. So certainly it's hidden in there. Ha'ava b'chol nefesh mi Yisrael. The love inside of every single Jew. You know, it's not a game. If you have a Jewish mother, you're a Jew, you have like this crazy blazing love for God. It's just, you might be like a complete atheist in your day job, but you are that. There is no yid that does not have this inner self. The only problem is that to bring it from concealed to revealed, that is not equal in every person. That's where there's massive differences between one to the other. How much it's shining, how much it comes out. Therefore, in the days of Mashiach, ha'adam, then the person will already be refined. Then it will already be what's called, that's what it means, the God will be revealed. It's not just revealed in the world, He'll be revealed in you. The glory of Hashem will be revealed, v'ra'u chol basar, and all flesh will see. V'amar bayom hahu, and then it says, the same bayom hahu, right? But the yom hahu, that concealed light, hine Elokeinu zeh. You'll say upon it, behold, this is God. This is our God. Kivinu lo, this is the one we waited for. Right? So Bayom Hahu has basically like two opposite connotations. It's the Bayom Hahu of Gullus. Oy, that day is coming. Hashem predicts when the Yom will be in a state of Hahu. And the Yom Hahu also is like that day which is coming, which is the Geula. Which means the Yom Hahu, that hidden day, is Elokeinu zeh. You're going to say that this is the God. You're going to bring it out of its concealment.
So everyone's going to be radiating love at their full capacity.
Yeah.
This time.
Yes.
Therefore, everyone's level of love expression is going to be equal.
Yeah. I mean, it might look like to have different colors and so forth of the rainbow, but it's going to be equally shining. Perush, which means Shi'a'ir or Hashem b'hizgalus. It will shine the light of God in a revealed way, ad nitfas v'nikba, to the point that it gets grasped and fixed, afilu b'mocho v'seichel anushe, even in his mind and what's called a seichel anushe. In other words, not only his godly soul will have it in full, but even the seichel anushe, even like the cold intellectual soul, will totally get it. There will be no more atheists. There will be every scientist will be a full firm believer, because they're gonna bring it out into even the mind of the world. Vra'u kol basar, and all flesh will see, beria gashmis v'chushis, and all flesh will see, he says, in a physical, tangible way. In other words, not just in your mind's eye, but godliness will so permeate the reality that like you'll see it physically everywhere. Ki Elokeinu hu b'chinas zeh, that the level of our God will be at a state of now not who, which is concealed, but zeh, which is revealed. Asher lezeh kivinu lo, and this is what we waited for. V'lo b'chinas hahu. Not we don't want the hahu. We want the zet. That's what we waited for.
So the intellect that we're speaking of, as it corresponds to the individual, what would that mean, like on the macro level, like with Hashem? Like we said, the godly soul is like the Shekhinah. So what would the intellect translate to?
I guess you could say like the.
How nature works, maybe?
Yeah.
The order of the world?
I mean what just comes to mind is Hashem's thought, his mind and his body and his heart is really like in the Beit Hamikdash itself. The Kodesh HaKadashim is Hashem's mind. It says you have like Chokhmah, Bina, and Das represented in there by the actual ark is the Bina, the container of the Torah, which is also in there, which is basically the Chokhmah, and then the Ten Commandments are in there, which is the Keser, which is all like contained inside of the Holy of Holies. So I mean, that's what it means. That's what's concealed essentially. And then you go out into what's called the Holy. That's the Holy of Holies. So it has the Chabad in there. You go out to the Holy, then you have the menorah, the table, and the golden altar, which is basically Hashem's Chesed, Gevurah, and Tiferes, right? Which is His heart is revealed. So in other words, literally the mind and heart of God will be revealed in the Beit Hamikdash. But in terms of just like an experience, I mean, it's going to be, everyone's going to see God.
And the revelation,
When they come,
do we need to do anything to bring the revelation? Or that's...
Yeah, I mean, we have to build a Mishkan, right? And how do you build a Mishkan? Basically in yourself. That's as much. I mean, if yourself builds a really hot Mishkan, it'll utilize all the gold and silver of all of Am Yisrael to help you with it, basically. But in general, it all depends on what we do. Yeah, what'd you say?
I was going to say that when the Mishkan, people are going to, the revelation is going to be everywhere, in all places, and people are going to come to the Beit Hamikdash, or it's going to be like...
Officially, it will eventually be in all places, is the truth.
Right.
But the way I guess it gets here is through the Mishkan. The Mishkan is like the conduit, which brings it to the world. But like we learned in the Maimer together that there is, in the days of Shlomo, let's say, when the temple was built, there was a difference between if you were at the temple versus far away. But that was, I mean, on a high level, talking about the Geula, that was not the ultimate light. Because there was a difference between Jerusalem and the rest of the world, that means that the light in general was still like a divisible light into levels, which itself shows that it's not the ultimate light which is equal everywhere. So the truth is that really the Mikdash at that point will be sort of everywhere, right? As it says actually, there's actually a concept in Halacha like this, that it says in the future all of Eretz Yisrael will spread to the whole world, right? And Jerusalem will spread to the borders of with present-day Israel. You ever heard this before?
Yeah.
And the temple will be as big as present-day Jerusalem, right? However, that doesn't stop, which means that, so even at that state, it will continue. So now the whole world is Israel, right? So that doesn't mean that Israel's not going to still expand to being, the whole Israel will become Jerusalem, right? So the whole Israel will then become Jerusalem. And the whole Israel at that point is not just this country, it's the whole world. The world is now Israel, and Israel is destined to become Jerusalem. So even the level of the entire world, which is now holding at the level of Israel, is still has yet a further aliyah, where don't we say that Israel is going to become Yerushalayim?
Do you mean the other way around? Yerushalayim is going to become Israel?
No, I mean that the whole Eretz Yisrael is going to have the kedusha of Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim is going to expand to all of Israel.
Yeah.
So even when the whole world is Israel, it still is going to have another aliyah that the whole Israel will become Yerushalayim, and then it's not over. Don't we say the whole Yerushalayim is going to become the Beit Hamikdash? So the whole world will be like basically a giant Beit Hamikdash.
And Mars will be Israel.
Yeah, we looking korbanos outside Israel.
What's that?
We're also looking korbanos outside Israel. How long is working in certain fruits that have to be in Yerushalayim? I mean, you go do that.
It depends how big Yerushalayim is, doesn't it?
Mars will become Canada.
We're talking about the Geula.
It's good. It's
So
remote
there
enough.
are laws. in the Rambam, very much Pashada Nigla laws, explaining how you can make the city of Jerusalem bigger. Right? There's a whole process. You have to walk around with like a group of musicians and Kohanim, and you basically offer sacrifice on the way, and you just make Jerusalem bigger. And guess what? There's another law in there that explains how you make the Azara bigger, which is the Azara is the walls of the temple. And it's the same thing, just like, okay guys, and we haven't ever really done this, I don't think, but there's a law in the Rambam explaining that if you just like sort of pack up some food and take a bag and like walk with a big army of people, you could just, there's a ceremony which enables you to expand the size of the Beit Hamikdash infinitely, right? There's no end to it. So I mean, it's in place. This I'm saying, it's a midrash. It's not a midrash. It's like a. It's found in the Mefarshim of the in Megillah actually in the Marsha. He explains the whole thing based on the Pesukim, but Rambam brings it down al pi halacha that there's mamash an expansion of Jerusalem and there's expansion of the Beit Hamikdash, a technical way how you do it. So I mean to say that you have to offer in the Beit Hamikdash only. You could do that in New Jersey also, as long as the Beit Hamikdash is over there.
Question: Does this kind of expansion of the Beit Hamikdash and Jerusalem and Israel is it kind of like reflective also of the kind of the world population? So insofar as the world becomes Israel, do the people of the world all become Bnei Israel? Eventually, like in a very far off Masiach time,
Not sure.
does everyone become Yehudim essentially?
Not sure. Okay. Vehine Amar Azal. The sages said, Kol hamoadim yubatelim lasi lavo. All holidays will eventually become nullified. Chutz mi Purim, except for Purim. And what's the idea behind that? What do you mean the holidays will become nullified? There's another place in Torah where it says that all these mitzvahs are liolam, laolme olamim. They're forever. You can't subtract. You can't add. So that itself needs mamash an explanation. What does it mean that the holidays are going to be nullified? So he doesn't explain here, but elsewhere it explains that it doesn't mean they're going to be like taken away, but it means the light of holiness that basically makes them holidays right now. Because what makes them a holy day as opposed to a weekday is that some extra divinity shines at that time, which distinguishes it from every other day. That level of divinity will be shining all the time. So they're going to be nullified because they're not going to be discernible that it's a particularly holy day more than a regular weekday. So they're going to be nullified in terms of their importance, their significance. They're going to go away, but not Purim. Purim has a certain type of light in it, which even when the Geula happens and all the lights come out and every day is mamish a Beit Hamikdash day, there's still going to be a certain unique level of divinity which already shines on Purim and will continue to shine on Purim. And it's just different than all other days. Because it says Yemei Purim Zichram lo yasuf mizara, right? Their remembering will not go away from our descendants. V'gam Amar Azal. In addition, it says halachos einam batelim lasi lavo. So just like the Megillah, it also says that halachas will not be nullified in the future to come. So there's a unique connection with halacha and the holiday of Purim. What do they have in common? They both say they won't be nullified when Mashiach comes. Va'inyan hu, and the concept is ki hine inyan shabbasos v'yomim tovim. You guys, we got a special invite from Barditchev to use their shul anytime. Just letting you know. I got a memo about that. It says Gam Amar Azal. Okay, so after this, the inyan hu ki hine inyan shabbasos v'yomim tovim hu shebehem hu bechinas aliyas ha'olamos. When it comes to Shabbos and Yom Tov, this is the inyan of what we call aliyas ha'olamos. What's that concept of aliyas ha'olamos? The worlds elevate. Aliyas ha'olamos v'nitzotzos, and all the sparks. Shekol nitzos v'nishmas Yisrael mis'ala b'madrega. That every spark and every soul goes up a level. Mipnei or Hashem hamizgala be'iti mahem. And why do they go up a level? Because of the light that's shining at those times. So basically, what does it mean? You hear this a lot, the elevation of the worlds on Shabbos and Yom Tov. You ever heard of this? Aliyas ha'olamos. What does it mean exactly? What's happening over there? Right? So the idea in simple language is that it says basically, Sheshis Yamim Asa Hashem. Esa Shamayim V'Sa Aretz. 6 days Hashem made the heavens and earth. Right? And the idea is, it says over there the word Asiya. Right? Sheshis Yamim Asa. He made. So also by Hashem you see there's something called thought, speech, and action. Right? Now, not to derail ourselves too much, but this is just an interesting topic, and we stumbled into it. So really when it comes to Asiya, the level of action of Hashem, we're told that even though Hashem has the level of action, okay, it's not real. It's not exactly like our level of action. Why? Because what is action really? It means you make a painting or you make a vessel and you put it in the shuk and you walk away from it and it sort of exists by itself. Your energy that you put into it, when it comes to action, you enclose it into an object and it no longer needs you to exist anymore. Right? That's what action is all about. And so Hashem doesn't really have action in that capacity, because there's no such thing that Hashem puts energy into something and walks away. We have the belief system. It's basically brought down as a principle of Jewish thought in Tanya, that Hashem is always needing to enliven something in order to exist. There's no concept that he just like sort of zaps some energy into something and then takes his mind off it, takes himself away from it, because if he did, it would cease to be. Right? The basic principle of Hasidus. He brings it in the first chapter of Shar HaYichud VeEmunah in the Tanya. So he brings it in the name of the Baal Shem Tov, and he brings it in the Baal Shem Tov himself says it in a Midrash Tehillim, which is the famous quote, Liolam Hashem Devarcha Nitzav B'Shamayim. Forever Hashem, your word stands in the heavens. Right? And the idea is that it's not just that your Torah is forever, so to speak, standing in the heavens. It means that the words, Yehi Rakia, Sochamayim, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, which is the heavens, are forever standing because due to your words constantly saying them. Right? Liolam Hashem Devarcha Nitzav B'Shamayim. Forever, literally, Hashem, your word is standing in the heaven to make the heaven be there. If you would take your word away, the heaven would disappear. There's a constant re-enlivening of the entire, every entity all the time in order for it to exist. And therefore, what does that mean? That there's no such thing as action by Hashem in truth. Because action is a shorthand of saying the opposite of that. That you make something and it exists independently from you. Just like your actions. You do it and then the action, like the energy that you put into it is there by itself without you. However, doesn't it say Sheshis Yamim Asa? It says 6 days Hashem made. So it does attribute action to Hashem. But what does it really mean is that we experience it as action. Right? Really, Hashem is speaking the world into existence at every second. That's what Baruch Sha'amar B'Hayolam. How does Hashem make the world? By saying the world. Not by making it. It's just that even though He is continuously saying it, right? We take it and it looks like He walked away and made it. Because in our perception, it looks like He zaps some energy into it, and it's here by itself. We don't see His continuous enlivening of it, and therefore the Torah says He made it, right? So, you with me? But so what I'm really saying is that the lowest level as far as Hashem is concerned is speech, right? But also it says, Vayom HaShvi Shabbos Vayinafash. On the seventh day He rested. So if He rested, what was He doing? He wasn't anyway doing, He was speaking. So He rested from speaking. So Hashem rests, what's His rest? He rests from the work that He was busy doing, and the work was speaking the world into creation. So on Shabbos, and Yom Tov for that matter, the world goes from a state of being enlivened by speech to enlivened by what? Thought. And that's basically what the whole thing that's going on. It says, Vayachal Elokim Bayom HaShvi, right? That Elokim stopped, right, on the seventh day. What is Elokim? A tzimtzum, a contraction. And what was he contracting? He was contracting himself from thought to speech. He stops making that contraction from thought to speech on the seventh day, and therefore the whole world is being created by thought. You might say, well, like I don't. What are you talking about? But the truth of the matter is, your whole being and every molecule in your body is not being contracted anymore into the state of speech, which is a huge contraction, right? To bring something down from letters of thought to letters of speech, it's like when you go up, you go into an unbelievably expanded state, like when a person is basically able to just stop speaking and think, his mind can attain much more levels of understanding of the subject matter. It's a burden basically to bring yourself down into a state of speech, and you have to sort of block out a lot of the things you're thinking about in order to get the job done of communicating the idea. So that stops on Shabbos, and that's where the Elokim stops, which is a contraction, and therefore the whole world is basically animated in a completely different level of godliness. And we as Jews, if you're a religious Jew for sure, you see that your entire life changes suddenly on Shabbos. I mean, like, you don't do all the things you do before. Now, you might look at it as these are like things that you're contriving out of yourself to act differently in order to obey a commandment. But what's really happening is that there's just a completely different energy going into the world where you don't do acts. You're not even allowed to speak the same way that you speak, and you spend your whole day davening. You can look at it as two ways: that you are doing something in order to obey a commandment, or you could look at it as Hashem is enlivening the world in a different state, that your whole life changes on Shabbos. You can live a completely different life, and all you're doing is basically like obeying to sort of let that new energy into your life. And if you do, you have a completely different transformed life. It's a Shabbos life. And by the way, it says in Sfarim that even an Am Haaretz, it does not lie on Shabbos. In other words, there's actually a different change in the nature of the world, that a person acts differently even if they're not keeping Shabbos. Like, you can't really tell a lie, it says. Even a simpleton, he doesn't know Torah mitzvahs, his nature changed on Shabbos. You're not the same person. And the Frierdiker Rebbe has this whole thing where he says, he proved that the pulse of a person changes on Shabbos. There's actually a physical transformation in the entire world, and it's because there's an aliyas ha'olamos. That's where we got off in this tangent to the mimer. There's an elevation of the world, and I'm just trying to explain to you what this elevation is. It comes up out of a level of tzimtzum and resides on a different frequency of existence, and it's a frequency of Hashem's thought. So what is Hashem's thought? There's much more revelation of God in every way. There's one less tzimtzum.
That's what we can draw down another soul on Shabbos.
That's what automatically you get this other soul, right? Because there's just you're in another world basically.
So where does Elohim play into this?
Elohim is the contraction, which is what makes it go back into the weekday. You see all the creations.
Okay.
It says Vayomer Elohim, Elohim, Elohim. It says 32 times Elohim in the creation story. And then at the end, suddenly, when all the creation is done, it says Vayachal Elohim. Elohim stopped. So what's going on there? Because Elohim stopped, and it says for the first time the Shem Havaya Yud Kei Vav Kei only in Shabbos, because suddenly Elohim stops, and the Kudas Alev we were just talking about before, like the point in the palace suddenly has a chance to reveal itself. Every Yid has a sort of uplift of divine abilities.
So you're saying that thought returns to speech through
Elohim. Elohim is a contraction, making thought contract itself into speech. Yes.
Remember we were saying that extra soul that the person gets at Joe, so that's hard to do that basically. So if they're moving to not so what's going on there?
It's not necessarily Makif and Panimi, I would say, is not the right thing there, because even on Shabbos, the extra soul can be Makif to you, right? And even on the weekday, your regular soul can be in a state of revelation to you, and Panimius to you. That has to do with your work of bringing it out. Like, in other words, when it's Makif, it's in a state of Esther, which means that it's hidden, and you need to do actions and thoughts and deeds in order to bring it to a state of revelation. But that's true on Shabbos and the weekday. It's just that your capacity goes up a million times on Shabbos because your whole body is being enlivened from a different state of affairs. Don't think it's so crazy. We talk about this a lot. Like everything is coming from above, right? So even, let's say, for example, a fruit, right? The day that the fruit has its 3rd-year-old birthday, okay? So it's completely different. The genetics, the biology of this thing changes from night to day because a second ago it was being enlivened by the 3 impure levels of klippa, and if you eat it, you could be mamish lashed and worse, get karis, you know? What is the punishment for eating
Fruit that's not an oil.
Yeah, eating fruit that is orla. It's not good. Okay, and then the next day it's holy. You can take it to Jerusalem and succulent fruit. You can eat it because it's obviously not in the state of gimel klippas atamesim. So this whole idea that you can have an object that just suddenly changed its whole composition becomes like the energy that God puts into it switches overnight. That's not something is uncommon, but it happens every week on this massive shift to Shabbos. And in general, the Alter Rebbe explains, this is the last point, then we'll go back into the Maimer, that in general, what does it mean? We were talking about before the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael. In general, the whole world, outside the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael, is residing at this level of asiyah, right? Like we talked about before, the deed, that's why when you go out into Eretz Yisrael, everyone talks about it. It's like very hard out there, right? Not one person I've ever talked to is like, it doesn't say the same thing. It's like, it's so hard, man. In Pittsburgh, it's so hard to keep Torah mitzvahs. It's just so much harder, And the reason is, no, you know what I'm talking about? It's like there's a thickness to the mind state of people. Yeah. You go into the supermarket, for example, and that's it. Like, there goes all of Kedusha, because you're looking at 700 different types of cereal and 700 different types of magazines, and it's magusham is what we call it. It's very gashmias, and it sucks you into the gashmias, and you could be mamash a holy man.
What is gashmias?
Gashmias is like the physical muck of that's the passion and purpose of everybody's life. There's no higher sort of spiritual, and even if it's spiritual, it's just thick with and the idea is because the world outside of Eretz Yisrael has an extra contraction in general into the level of asiyah, whereas Eretz Yisrael is always ever only holding by the level of Yetzirah, which is basically the Indian of speech. Like in Eretz Yisrael, why is it called the Holy Land 24/7, even though it's not Shabbos? Is because it's different than every other land. There's one less contraction on the godly life force in the borders of Eretz Yisrael. That's why it's very clearly delineated, the borders of Eretz Yisrael, because what are those borders all about? Inside that land, it's like a Shabbos. There's one less contraction, and that's why everybody who comes here says, oh, it was a very spiritual experience. Yeah, it's a holy land. You know what I mean? You feel God.
What is that less contraction?
That's basically, the Alter Rebbe says very clearly, the rest of the world is an asiyah, which is deed, which, as I said, like the feeling of being totally cut off, independent existence. Here it's like speech. What's the idea of speech? Is that you're always connected to the one who's speaking. You have that feeling, basically, that there's a God that's in charge of everything, And, okay, and basically, and then on Shabbos, what's the big elevation? So it says on Shabbos, everybody elevates to the world of Bria. Whether you're inside of Eretz Yisrael, whether you're outside of Eretz Yisrael, and the whole world goes up to a state of Bria, which is thought.
And they say it's sort of like Shabbat here every day in Tzfat. So maybe we're in Bria all the time.
There is that such a. We spoke about. There's 10 levels of kedusha in Eretz Yisrael itself, and one of them we said is walled cities. Right?
Yes.
So I'm just saying, besides Tzfat has its own kedusha because of all the holiness that people brought to it. It has a official level of one step up from regular Eretz Yisrael of kedusha in the halachic ramifications of it. Yeah, intrinsic
Which
in
you
it.
can understand as Bria.
Not necessarily as Bria, but I don't know. Within Yetzirah, there's 10 levels of. There's 10 spheres of Yetzirah. Don't forget.
Oh, within Yetzirah there are 10 spheres. Okay.
And then on Shabbos it goes up to Bria.
I got it.
I mean, I'm happy if you want to say it goes up to Atzilus and Shvas on Shabbos. No problem.
Probably does.
I've made that comment myself many times.
Yeah,
I'm being a little bit more conservative in my old age. Okay. So anyway, let's go back. So this is what it means, Aliyas HaOlamos. This is the idea, basically, that on Shabbos and Moadim, there's something called an aliyas ha'olmos. The worlds go up. Now we know what it means. The worlds go up. It was a little bit of a detour, but it was something you can use forever. And the nitzotzos, all the sparks, they have one less contraction. Every yid has one less contraction. Mis'alav madrega, we go up in level. Mipnei or Hashem misgala be'itimahem, and it's because of the light of Hashem which reveals itself at those times. V'nisvasev behem ora b'simcha v'chedvas Hashem, and it gets added light and joy and gladness in Hashem. La'alita neshamus, to light, to like fire up the souls, the dafka bo yizbarach. That we get basically what happens when more godliness is apparent in us. We get more excited for Hashem. That's why Shabbos, everything is all about davening, basically, right? That's why especially our minhag, it's not just stam like we get out of bed late, as you know, we start just the same time as everybody else, but somehow we daven every Shabbos till like 2 o'clock. What's that all about? Because that's what Shabbos really is. Shabbos is, okay, you have to have a little eating, but even the eating is different. The whole Indian of Shabbos is davening, because what is davening is thought. You're supposed to be sitting and meditating the whole Shabbos. The great sages of old, they would not speak even on Shabbos. Even everybody has a mitzvah that you're not allowed to speak regular words. You have to change your speech on Shabbos. Like you're not allowed to speak about the weekday, you're not allowed to speak about regular things, you have to like guard your speech. But the great ones of old, they wouldn't even talk at all. Because God doesn't talk, right? God stops the contraction of creating the world with speech, and He starts creating the world with thought. And we want to be like Him. So the whole thing is davening. The main objective of the whole day is to daven. Because davening is thought. What? On Shabbos?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you sure?
Baba Saleh wouldn't speak on Shabbos.
It's not considered necessarily the final thing that you shouldn't speak at all on Shabbos. It's like an indication of how much you have to prepare. You have to guard your language. Like Rabbi Gurstein, he said it for bringing recently from a mimer. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, right? Which means, simply it means what? That Hashem said Shamor es Yom HaShabbos and Zachor es Yom HaShabbos in the first set of the Ten Commandments, which is in Parshas Yisro, and the second set, which is in Parshas V'eschanan. The commandment on Shabbos is slightly different one to the other. The first one says remember Shabbos. The second one says guard the Shabbos. So what? Hashem didn't give us like one set of the Ten Commandments? How come it's recorded twice in two different languages? Yeah, you're familiar with this? So what's the answer? Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad. That when Hashem said the commandment of Shabbos, He said guard it and keep it in one statement simultaneously, which is something that we can't write it down like that. So therefore they wrote it down twice, one with the word Shamor, one with the word Zachor. Because basically it's impossible in this form to capture all that. God can say two things at the same exact time, but not man. So that being said, that's the pshat. But Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad it has this beautiful Hasidic perush to it, which is basically that you have to shamor, guard your speech, and zachor, and use your speech. Is why I brought this up. B'dibur, with your speech, the inyan of echad. In other words, shamor v'zachor, b'dibur, you have to have a shamor component and a zachor component in your dibur, which is basically not speaking, but also yes, speaking the right things. What are you supposed to be? What makes it the right thing? Echad. Dibur, the concept of echad. Everything that you mention or don't mention should be guarding or preserving or honoring the inyan of echad, the oneness. That's what Shabbos is. You follow what I just said? So in other words, from there it is indicative that there is an inyan of speech on Shabbos. It's just that it's a completely different level of speech. So I'm saying, okay, whatever. So, okay. That being said, it looks like we're out of time. But let's just get to the period. So he says that all the sparks go up, and he creates a sort of la'lit haneshamos ladavka bo yisbarak. It fires up the souls to cling to Hashem. B'yeser says in a greater measure, ubepratios b'pesach mizgale ora ava chesed elyon b'panimias haneshamos. And he says particularly when it comes to Pesach, actually. Because Pesach is the first of the Moadim. So Pesach has this level, it's like when the Jewish people came out of Mitzrayim Mamish. The whole idea of Shabbos is to come out of the contractions So Pesach is literally the coming out of contractions. It's like all limitations disappear, and we go up to this very, very high level. You know, the night of Pesach is a very, very serious night. Leil Shimurim. It's like the essence of Hashem shines in that night. So really, it's like a Shabbaton level, and that's the idea of the love. And it's also all the three festivals. It's Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes. Pesach is Chesed anyway. So it's the idea of the love of the Chesed coming in and revealing itself to the panemius of the neshama. True, as he's saying, it's true about all holidays and all Shabbosim, but he's saying in Pesach in general, you see this idea. And this is the notion of the soul coming out of its concealment. All right, we have to hold here. We'll pick it up tomorrow. Yeah, it's a nice one. It's good.
Really good.